and welcome back to another video. Today I have a really special what if video to give you guys. Yes, I'm finally back with these, for real this time. This suggestion was given to me by Rosie the Murderer, who wanted to see a reality in which Prince Winter was an Animus dragon. Ever wondered how differently things would go, even from the beginning of Winter's story? I'm super excited to read this all to you today, and I really hope you enjoy. But before we begin, a huge shout out to my patrons. Devlove95, Slightest Wild, Fizz, Thistle, Noobto, Pyronuke, and Avril. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Links to their social medias are in the description down below. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video and today's original story. "Take me instead," Hailstorm replied in a heartbeat. He stepped a claw's length forward, bowing his head in surrender to the nearby Skywings. "I'm the one you want, not my brother." Winter felt his stomach lurch. "I'm the only Animus our tribe has had since the age of Darkstalker. I'm definitely the one Queen Scarlet would want to stick a talon into and force to command her armies. Not Hailstorm, even though he is strong." Winter looked up to the trees above him as he felt beads of sweat trickle onto his brow. His muscles were bound so tightly that it would take 10 crocodile's claws to pry him out of the dirt. He cast anxious glances at the Skywing guards who surrounded him in Hailstorm. They hissed more curling and hot smoke into the air with every passing second. "Is that so?" one of the Skywings said. She stepped out from behind a general, her face encrusted with lines of rubies below both her eyes. "Princess Ruby? Or perhaps one of Scarlet's other daughters," Winter thought to himself as his vision grew blurry. Hailstorm nodded, and one of the Skywing guards laughed. "Everyone knows about Winter of the IceWings," the guard began, ending his humorless cackle with a shallow breath. "He's the first Animus your tribe has had in 2,000 years. There's no mistaking that dragonet." The Skywing princess turned her head to look at Winter, eyes narrowing. Suddenly, she flicked a talon at him, and several soldiers nodded. Winter did not even have time to react, for he was thrown to the ground by several large bodies. His claws were now deep in the earth, and pressure slammed onto his chest. Several of the soldiers were holding him to the ground, and one hit his face with such fury and strength that Winter thought he was about to lose his head. After a second of his vision entering an endless void, Winter began to see colors mold into shapes and lines again. "What are you doing?" he shouted, now realizing how small, young, and helpless he sounded. Winter felt his face turn red at the thought. Hailstorm must have yelled, because his mouth was open still. The young IceWing had not even heard his brother's scream, with his momentary flicker of unconsciousness and pain. But he saw the aftermath of it in Hailstorm's eyes. A deep crimson liquid began to ooze off the side of Winter's face, as he felt it trickle down his scales and drip slowly into the dirt. Half of him was still buried in the ground, and breathing felt harder as the Skywing on top of him continued to hold his merciless grip. "We lied, okay?" Hailstorm yelled. "Winter isn't our Animus. I am." Every Skywing head turned to look at him, including the princesses. "Go on," she said slowly, like a toxin making its way to the heart through many endless veins. "We wanted to make sure that I was going to be safe," Hailstorm began. "The number of possible animi on Pyria lowers by the day, and I'm our tribe's only hope of being restored to the powers our royal line used to have. If the gene dies with me for good, we'll lose everything I've had us build. That's why we lied to everybody." Hailstorm turned to face Winter, and his expression suddenly grew cold. The young IceWing had never seen that dark of a look in his brother's eyes before. It looked like the kind of thing he imagined Arctic seeing before Darkstalker brutally murdered him. The thought of that story maybe becoming true today for either him or his brother caused Winter's head to pound inside. "You've seen Winter right here and now," Hailstorm continued. "He's weak. Pathetic. Do you really think that if he was our Animus, he'd have been able to fight back?" The group of Skywings exchanged glances, murmuring. The princess only stared, waiting for Hailstorm to continue. "If he was our Animus, we'd all be dead and doomed. But how would the other tribes know how weak he is if we always keep him locked up? So, that's how we started this facade. Winter? He's worth nothing to us. I honestly think it'd be funnier if you let him get up and have to report my loss to the tribe himself. An execution for losing the IceWing Animus? That'd be more entertaining to read about. Would it not be, Princess? Scarlet's daughter exhaled slowly, taking in the sight before her for a long time. Winter felt the blood start to cake on the side of his face, only to notice more of the wet crimson stream down a claw the Skywing's talon dug deeper into. Was all she said for a long while. Finally, the princess spoke. If you are indeed a real Animus, perform a bit of your magic in front of us. Order for the tree to my right to collapse at this very moment. Hailstorm's face twitched for a moment, hoping with everything inside him that his brother would understand. Pretend it's me. Do as she says. Winter saw his idea in his eyes, even behind the feigned coolness. He knew his brother better than any dragon, and his mind was racing too much to come with a plan of his own. Against the claws on his ribs, Winter took in a shaky and pained breath. Tree, I command that you fall into the grass of the forest below, Hailstorm said loudly. Every Skywing soldier had their eyes locked on the trunk, their breasts hitched and bodies frozen. Winter understood and repeated the command in his head, praying to the great ice dragon and anything else living in the polar waters that this would work. Instantly, the massive tree began to wobble before making its quick descent to the forest floor. A massive wave of wind whipped at Winter's bleeding face, causing his wounds to sting. A trickle of a smile began to form on the princess's lips. Ah, so you are the one. I didn't know that IceWings could be so clever. Don't underestimate my royal family, Hailstorm said with a deep growl. The princess only rolled her eyes, smiling. Oh yes, how clearly was I just proven wrong. You surely are a fool if you think you'll be seeing any of them again. You are now property of my mother, Queen Scarlet of the Skywings. Hailstorm tried to step over to the princess, only to be grabbed at the shoulder by a Skywing general. His large wings loomed over him. Kill any of us with your magic now, and Scarlet will hunt you. Better come quietly, or we might as well end the existence of your brother. Cost-free. After all, that would be just as entertaining. Hailstorm's face lit up with fury. You can't do that. I'll never surrender to your tribe, Sky Dragon. Never will I use my magic in service of your queen. Princess only laughed as a group of Skywings overpowered Hailstorm. Winter had no idea if it was part of the act, or if they were seriously too strong. Hailstorm was the IceWing's best fighter, but not even he could take on so many at once. Winter strained against the general's hold, who seemed to just now notice he was even there in the dirt. Upon a look of confirmation from the royalty, he loosened his grip, and eventually stood up on the ground. Winter heaved, the bones of his ribs feeling like they were about to be bent and cracked, like a small stick if he moved any further. He had not even realized how much oxygen he was missing, or how wobbly he felt from the blood loss. 3 moons. The ground is really red. Did I seriously bleed that much in front of them? Winter thought as his stomach twisted in his chest. Hailstorm! It was all he could get out. Even the one name he had said in so many ways throughout his life was too hard to utter now. Winter's tongue felt like lead. His thoughts were jumbled against the gross, sticky trail of crimson left on his scales. All his brother could do was look at him over his shoulder. For the first time, Winter felt like he could not understand what Hailstorm meant by a look. His words were lost in his eyes. Did he really mean those things? Is he scared? Angry? Does he want me to follow? I can't tell. Almost in an instant, wings began to flap. They shielded Hailstorm's face, and before Winter could even see through the blurriness, he realized that his brother was no longer in front of him. He was alone in the woods. All that remained from the interaction were the fallen tree and the grass now turned red from where Winter had been thrown. If not for those, the young IceWing Animus would have believed it to all be a terrible nightmare. But nightmares are something you can wake up from. And even with the most powerful magic in Imperio, Winter had nothing. His magic was the kind of thing that left dragons trembling, but instead, he was the one shaking. What did I just let happen? The worst part of it, Winter would soon find out, so his family did not care about Hailstorm. They only minded it slightly when they thought about how they had lost a strong member of royalty, but realized they had more upon seeing Winter. They still had their power, as they called it. It only took that night for Winter to realize that nobody was going to search for his brother. The royalty had said that he had done a noble thing, and was due to be rewarded by the great ice dragon in the afterlife. But Winter, he was their great gift from the divine. He was the one to protect. Winter spent many moons thinking about his brother, how he should have used his one gift to the tribe to save him. He should not have cared what the elders thought, or even what Hailstorm did. His brother was a gift to them, even if nobody acknowledged it in the passing years, in favor of feeling hope towards Winter's abilities. Even in the war, Queen Glacier refused for Winter to cast his one spell. She and the other First Circle IceWings wanted to wait for the perfect and necessary opportunity, and Winter obeyed. The rest of the tribes are still under the guise that the Animus of the IceWings was long dead. Winter was their secret weapon for years. When the young Animus caught sight of his brother, bloodied, battered, and bruised, shivering on the floor of one of Scarlet's cages, his heart shattered into a million pieces of fine glass. Hailstorm looked so small. His ribs nearly stuck out under his scales, and the cell was empty, not even a rock to sit on. It had taken so many years for Winter to locate him, and to get away from his family long enough to take a journey out here. And yet, now Hailstorm stood, laid, really, given his current state. Winter could see the lines of where Hailstorm's smile used to be on his face. They were faint now. In that moment, the young dragon no longer cared what anybody thought of him. Not the Skywings, not the other tribes, not even the IceWings. Because Hailstorm was family. And he would never forget about the way his brother had sacrificed everything for him. And would have done it again in a heartbeat. Their breaths in sync, eyes locked on each other with an earnestness so long lost, the brothers touched talons to the bars of the cell. And Winter cast his last spell. The only one since the tree falling in the woods that day. I order for the bars of this cage be turned to sand, and fall in a heap, and for a storm to form, one strong enough and dark enough for my brother and I to make it away to the Ice Kingdom without any Skywing noticing us, especially Scarlet. The magic bent reality to its will, and everything fell into plan. However, Winter hesitated when he flew through the border to the Ice Kingdom. Hailstorm exchanged a worried glance. "I don't want to live the life in there I have all these years while you've been gone," Winter said quietly. "Never again do I want to wake up in a world where I don't see you each day." Hailstorm nodded, looking up at his brother. "You don't have to. And look, Winter, I won't tell them how you got me out. I'll just say that you used your training." Winter did not reply for a long while, merely staring down at the piles of snow beneath their wings. Finally, he shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm not doing that. Winter, Hailstorm." The two brothers saw deeply in each other's eyes for the first time in years. Winter made up for the glance he studied in his memories all that time, because now he could read into Hailstorm's face clearer than he ever had. Winter did not need to say any more, but he still did. "You saved my life years ago, and I had to take all the credit. Now you saved mine, just by being you. That's what we'll tell the tribe, because it's really true that you did save me, in so many ways." For the first time in a while, Hailstorm smiled. It eventually turned into a laugh, and before the two of them knew it, they were laughing as their wings intertwined in the snowy sky. The brothers embraced, faces no longer being seen in just memories anymore. Winter technically was not lying when he told the new queen that Hailstorm had saved him. He truly had. He had saved his heart, and he had saved his hope. And that's pretty much it for this video. I had so much fun writing this one, as it's on a really special topic. It would be so interesting to see Winter as an Animus. I hope you guys like my spin on this, because who doesn't want some angst with an eventual happy reunion? If you're wondering why Hailstorm was locked up in a cell with nothing, it's because Scarlet thought he was refusing to use his powers, like he had told her daughter. She still believed that he really was an Animus, especially because the IceWing tribe never laughed at her and told the world that Winter was the real Animus. Scarlet thought that Hailstorm would eventually reach his breaking point, which he had. Only, he couldn't succumb and just use his powers for her. He really didn't have any, though still kept 𝙈𝙁 to keep Winter safe. For years. It's honestly quite beautiful. But thank you all so much for watching. What was your favorite part? Let me know down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.